we're now going to create the mouth, and when you're creating the mouth, the techniques are a little bit different. We're not going to be using the pen tool, but rather we're going to be using the rectangular tool, the rectangle tool. And the reason being is because the mouth isn't, for this sake, we're going to be adding like some sort of gradients across the mouth, and we cannot, because of the complexity of the mouth, we cannot actually execute a perfect gradient, because that will be, if we use the pen tool, we shall be kind of making something that's unrealistic. So the workaround with this, we just use a rectangular tool, and with the help of the nodes, they help in transitioning the colors very, very well. Now, what we do is for example, we go select our rectangular tool, and then here we have this, the fill layer, okay, set to the color that we want, the base color of the mouth. I'm just assuming there, and then just click and drag. Now, for the sake, I'll be showing you again how to do it with the mouse, don't worry. Now, if for example here we now have our shape here, but I don't want to see the color, okay? So what I can do, I can make it an outline by going here, and then you click Ctrl on your keyboard and click at the same time on the layer there. It will put it in an outline. It still has the same fill color, but it has put it in an outline to enable us focus on the work much better. Okay, so with this having been done, we can now go here to the object and then create gradient mesh. Now, when you create a gradient mesh, normally in my designs, I begin with 2 rows by 3 columns to make it as simple as possible to lay down the first structure of the mouth. It helps very well, but anyway, for when you do this, I'm just going to show you how it blends very quickly. Some techniques you can do is, first you can select these by clicking A on your keyboard or the direct selection tool right there, and then you drag all of them, and then S on your keyboard to bring up the scale tool right here, and you just drag down like this, and do the same this side. So A on your keyboard, click and drag, select all of them. S on your keyboard, just drag down like that, okay? And again, after that, you can go back to A on your keyboard. While all of them are still selected, you can just move them up like this. And then you can also maybe move different elements wherever you want, okay? So you can just maybe make that like this, whatever. Here, I'm just making a demonstration. Do the same thing this side as well. So the handles again will help you to achieve that. So I'm just going to make something very, very simple. When we zoom in, for example, we can try to make these lines A on your keyboard. I'll try to avoid this overlapping of the handles, because they will create undesirable results. So you watch out for them whenever you're doing it, okay? So try to make these as smooth as possible, just like that. So when you have a base shape like this, for example, you can decide to begin adding, then see, for example, when you turn on the outline, now you have this, for example. But you can decide that you want to add, let's say, another vertical line here, and another one here, and another line here, and another line here. And how you do that, if in case you want to add more gradient mesh shapes, just go over here to the mesh tool, or just click U on your keyboard. Now when you click in an empty space, here it will essentially do nothing if you're in an outline. If you click on a line, it's going to add a vertical shape, and it's going to be an average of the two in between. Okay, if you click on the vertical line, vertical mesh tool, it's going to click to create an outline, again a horizontal, but it's going to be in relation with the one it's in between. Same if you do that below. Okay, so when you go and let's select all these first shapes here, for example, by just A on your keyboard and click and drag, and then when you highlight them here, let's give them a darker color, just like this. Same to this, we're going to give it I'm just going to give a dark color. I don't know what the result's going to be. And now when you click here, for example, and one very important tool when you're doing when you have a reference image, you can first select this and then select the gradient tool, so that whenever you just want to, for example, select this part, you click. Once you click Control on your keyboard, it selects this first tool here. So Control, it helps you to select, and then when you release the Control, it helps you to sample the area that you're doing, just like that. For example, here again, when you Control and then click and drag, and then release the Control, and then it helps you to sample the area. So for example, here now you would see that there is a detailing right there. Okay, so again, we can do it over and over again. Let's just say, for example, up to there. Okay, and then down here we want to now change the colors a little bit. I'm going to make these weird colors, don't worry. Let's see here what we have. Now you can see that the colors, you can see how the colors transition from within each other. All right, so again, if you're going to understand this very well when you're dealing with the mouth. All right, so now here we have the mouth base shape, and you can see I'm beginning with, again, the rectangular tool that I told you earlier. I'm just selecting the lower lip. I'm making a rectangle similar to the size of the lower lip, just like that. And I'm just going to quickly make the fill layer to remove that stroke. I don't need it, I just need the fill layer. Now I'm going to go to the object and just go to create gradient mesh, just like I've been doing before. Alright, so I'm going to begin with 2 rows and 3 columns, just like that. And I'm going to create, I've just created outlines, just that by Control click to put it in outline shape. Now again, I'm going to click A on my keyboard or the direct selection tool, and I select all of them, scale them by clicking S on your keyboard or there on the right side, and then scale them down just like that. And once you do that, what you're trying to do is scaling them and then moving them in position. So here the essential part that you're supposed to be doing is just trying to align the mesh in line with the lip as much as you can. So try to spend as much time as you can, because in doing it right will help you to come up with a desirable result that is as close to the real image as you can, as you want it. Try not to make them overlap. Try to make the handles not overlap, like you can see right there, like I was doing there. It will create undesirable results. Okay, so try to make them as curved as possible. So use the handles, as you can see here. I'm trying to align the mouth in line with I'm just trying to align the mouth to be so that the mesh shapes are exactly similar to the lining of the mouth. Okay, so again, doing that on the side real quick there. I'm just trying again, to move like so, here you can actually also rotate it just slightly if that's what you're going for. There is no specific way of doing this, but all you have to do is try to get it as close. The way you interpret it is most important. So the way I interpret the mouth is, this is how I do it. Okay, if you try to do it with a pen tool, you're not going to be able to add great mesh shapes. That's why we're beginning out with a rectangle tool. You can also move the anchor on the side and then just try to rotate them. Like I'm rotating now the anchor from with the reference point at that area where you see the mouse. So the whole idea here is me just trying to get this mouse as close as possible to the real image, to the reference shape. So you have to take some time and just get the principle, and then take some time to make something that your brain understands. Okay, so again, if you see something that you're not comfortable with, again you can change it as you're seeing there. I am rotating now with the fulcrum at that point, at the upper point instead of the middle section, because that's how I'm interpreting it at the moment. So, but don't worry, sometimes things change. But again, this image that I was working with was really blurry, so I couldn't really guess the real points where I was doing. So I was also estimating a little bit, but it helps to practice with any image you have. So here I'm just doing some refining to make sure that the handles aren't overlapping, because if the handles overlap, then that's a problem. You will have weird artifacts in your illustration. But if you want to have a smooth mouth, you need to make sure that the handles don't overlap that much. When you're happy with the refining, the next part you're going to want to add is maybe some more shapes. And also you can keep turning it on and off to see if it works. So just make sure that you don't have weird stuff, just like the way you see there on the corner, made by the handles being twisted in weird direction. Now when you're done, we're going to now add a mesh tool like you saw. Again, I'm going to just click at points where I think I need to add a mesh. So I'm going to add some vertical meshes right there. Don't worry, you can always edit them and change them accordingly by getting the direct selection tool. Let me zoom in real quick there. So I need it to be kind of bent, okay, again, I need it to be a little bit in line with the reference, this other reference, and so that they are both like curved very well, because that will give the illusion of depth and height in the mouth, on the lip I mean. Okay, so again I'm doing it for this side as well. Again, just move it around. Don't get scared to edit it around. The good thing with mesh shapes is they are very flexible, so you can always edit to get, you can spend as much time as you want to get as good a result as you want. So I don't use, you can also use the mesh method, this method, but you can use it for the entire face. We shall be covering that in future videos, but I don't like that very much because of the too much plasticky effect it gives. That's why I only use it for the mouth. So here, as you may see now, I'm going to add some horizontal lines. Let me just add one more vertical right there. A on your keyboard, and then just edit it just really quickly. And now the next part is maybe add some more horizontal lines, because right there is a technique that you're going to be seeing that I'll be doing, and make sure you follow very closely so you don't forget you see that line that I'm going to add, that's marking my end of the lip, and the line below is actually going to be the skin. So what I'll be explaining that point when we get there. So that line that I've just added, the horizontal line, is marking my end of the lip, and the line below it is going to be, I'm going to put it at 0, so that the end of the lip blends in very well with the base, with the face base shape. Okay, so again, just don't worry, I'll explain it when we get at that point, but just make sure you edit around, just move it around so that it's blending very well with the mesh shape very well. Okay, so if you zoom in and out, and you can see that the mesh wraps around her lip pretty close. It's almost all right. There is no much detail in the eye, in the lips for me to work with, so I will not be going into much detail again. So with that, now I'm going to click both of them. So as you may see, now I'm clicking shift, and then I sample. All right, that's the method that I was showing you there. You first of all select the direct selection tool, and then select the the eyedropper tool, so that whenever you click control on your keyboard, and it will give you the direct selection tool, and then when you release, it will give you the eyedropper tool, and just kind of sample around the points. Okay, you don't want to sample very far, you just sample close to the points, because they're very different lighting conditions. So again, they'll be giving the lighting conditions similar to the image. So just sample around the points, just close to that, and make sure you do it for all those nodes, all those points, however many you decide to go with. I've decided to go with a few, but you may decide to go with so many. And again, don't be afraid, but all you have to do is you'll be spending a little bit more time sampling points and doing just exactly what I'm doing. So you want to sample something that is very, very close to what you think that area should be. All right, so once that is done, okay, let me make sure that those points are sampled, for example. And don't sample the line, because if you make sure you're not sampling the line, most especially those points that are congested, because if you sample a line, then you'll have again weird problems. Don't worry, of course you can always change it, but that's something to note. Okay, so now I'm going to click and select all the lower points. So the way you do that, you click the point and then click shift on your keyboard, so that you're selecting all of them at the same time. Okay, so we're going to now click, make sure you're selecting all of them at the same time. How you know it's selected? It's green and not white, so you're seeing them selected. And now we're going to put it the opacity to 0, so that it's transparency. Just take it to 0, because that will mark a transition from the end of the lip, like I told you earlier, to the face. Okay, so when you turn back, you will see that the mouth has been created. Now we're going to create another part, and that's the upper part of the mouth as well, and then we shall be creating the teeth finally. Before that, let me just create quickly the highlights, just to add a little bit of detail to the mouth. So I'm going to you see that white outline there, I'm just using the pen tool and quickly creating something that is kind of close to a perceived highlight that I want. So I'm just tracing around that very shiny area, and I'm sampling the color of that, the average color of it, and I'm just going to blur it essentially, just to add it in there. Okay, so now you may see that it's very prominent, but then you click it and go over to the you go over to the effects panel and then go over to the blur section, Gaussian blur, and then add, maybe make it whatever you want. I'm making it 0.9, or you can even add it, let's put it at 1.6, and then OK. And now you're going to just decrease its opacity. Okay, so you go down to the transparency, put it at 50%. It's kind of still prominent, but it's almost what we are going for. So let's not pay too much attention to it. If it turns out too much, we shall adjust. Okay. So we can also add shadows, those darker areas that you see. Again, we're using our pen tool this time to add those shapes, since they don't require any gradient or change in color. We're just going to quickly, they only require one color, so that's why we are using the pen tool versus the mouth, which is complex. So I'm just going to quickly make a shadow there. Okay, so I'm tracing around those darker areas of the mouth that you see. Okay, and I'm just going to go get that and then sample the darkest area, or the area that I feel is really dark, that is giving me that illusion, and then I work with that. Okay, so again, feel free to adjust it a little bit, and then again essentially do the same thing, just go and add a Gaussian blur to it. So once that is selected, go to effect and then blur, Gaussian blur 1.6. okay, and then the next part you want is to decrease its opacity really well. Okay, so you're going to select it and go to its transparency and change its transparency to, let's give it a 30 because it was too much really. To the upper part now, again I'm going to follow the same procedure. All right, it's going to be the very exact same procedure. So again, you just go and then add the gradient mesh tool, and then just follow again, make them as close as you can. So again, here I'm not going to go too much in detail of explaining this because I've explained it like so. I hope this part you will be able to do. We're going to work upon the teeth and we're going to be using the pen tool. The teeth are pretty much easy. Again, for maybe a few pointers, just make sure that you kind of just use a white stroke, again just white outline, and make them a little bit above, make them intersect inside within the the lips, the upper lip, for example. Let them start from the upper lip. This is because you don't want your illustration to have unnecessary gaps in between it. So that's why I take them all the way up, because when we are arranging the lips, we're going to put them below the lip sections. So you don't have to worry about those extruding details. So just again work around that. So this image is a little bit blurry. That's why it doesn't really have too much information for me to work with. I'm just trying to forge a way through, but it's all try and error. If I do something and I don't like it, I'm going to try and do it again. Okay, and the same should apply to you as well. If you do something, if you're working with an image that isn't very clear, what you have to do is to do it again. So I don't really like the way these teeth are coming out, but I'm going to first go through them again, and if I don't like the final result, I may decide to do them again. Okay, but all in all, this is the way you do the teeth first. Okay, so we're going to make sure you just make all of them at the same time. Just give them a slightly similar color. Now there are a little bit more things to do on the mouth other than just the teeth. So this part is pretty much not so important as long as you get the idea of how to make them. Now we can group all of them. We can just select up all the teeth that we've made and just group them by Ctrl G on your keyboard, and then we can decide to switch back all the layers, and you will see how it's coming out. Now the next part is arranging them just like that, and you may see now they look really terrible, but again, this you can edit it and just make them a little bit much better than just this. For example, as you may see, I've used a more number of teeth than the actual teeth that are within this photo. Okay, so again, I can do it again by just working with now I'm trying different methods. I'm trying another method where I'm reducing the number of teeth now. Now don't worry about how bright the teeth are, because we're going to fix that in a minute on how to add detail and everything. Now as you can see, these teeth are sitting on top of the lips, which we don't want. What we want is to, first of all, we can group all of them and just rearrange them. Okay, so we can, because they're all working together, we can group them and then put them below the lips. Okay, so this is kind of much better than the first one. So that's much better than the first one. The next part we may have to do is probably just add details to it, just maybe some grayish, like decrease the whiteness of the teeth. But first we can add a few details by maybe using let's first of all decrease its white color. Let's put it a little bit down to a grayish color. Don't worry about how that is working, because when we switch on all the other elements with reference to the mouth, it will still appear white. So don't be frightened by the dark color that is showing through. Okay, so the grayish color that we are using to define the teeth. Okay, so the next part we're going to just be adding a little bit of areas. Those areas that I'm adding are actually shadows. When light hits the teeth, it's going to be casting shadows depending on how it's hitting the tooth. Okay, so those areas are going to be slightly darker and real images to signify the shadows. But you want to do when you're doing this, you want it to be very subtle, so that it's not really too much. So the color should not deviate very much, because at the end of the day you're just trying to create detail. You're not creating new shapes, you're just creating detail. You're just communicating a message. Okay, So there we are having that area again. Now don't worry, again we shall have to probably reposition those. So as you can see, they're seated on top, but we're going to reposition them, and we shall decrease their colors as well, so don't worry. So as you may see, now it has a little bit of detail, but we still have work to do on all of them. We can increase the color a little bit. So here it may seem to be like it's not really working well, but in a grand scale of things, if you look at it with the entire mouth done with what we're going to add in with the gradients, it will be working perfectly well. So you don't have to worry about that. So for this sake, I'm going to leave it here, and I'm just going to turn it on and off so you can see how far we've gone so far. Now I've isolated the mouth. There is just a little bit of things that I have to show you before. We're going to don't concentrate on those were the finished illustrations, but the parts we're now going to concentrate on are down here. You see that area that I'm turning on and off. Okay, we're going to make that because when you put it, this is the same mouth. I've just copied it and then pasted it here, and I'm just trying to explain to you how this come about. So there is that part, and there is also this part. Okay, so those parts that over down there, you will see that it gets darker as it moves back inside, because then that will create a realistic kind of mouth that we want. And the way you create those two shapes, those are just shapes, as you may see. They are just shapes. When I pull it out, for example, and put it, let me say here, so the way I created that is you go over, get your pen tool, and you're just making something you're just making something similar to the let's say like that. Okay. And you can just bring it back like this. Now for the gradient, of course you go to the gradient and you're going to specify it like this. So these parts, I made them darker, and then a light part white, and then white and light. Okay, so that it will form these parts that are dark. Okay, and then finally this other part here, this part which is on and off. Now this part, sometimes it can be pinkish, like the color of the mouth, or it can be like that. Again, you can use this exact shape that you first created. All you have to do is to come and select it, copy, Ctrl+C, paste in front, Ctrl+F, and then for that one, what you have to do is to make it a different color. Okay, so you can come and get your pen tool, your eyedropper tool, and then you can just select somewhere like that. All right, so you will see that once you select, it will be taking on the properties of that area you selected, and putting it below the original shape. So if you decrease, because the gradient shape is just a filler, it's not part of the mouth, it's just showing light interactions. So we can actually decrease its opacity. So you decrease the opacity of the upper shape, So let's the transparency, take it down maybe to 50, then you realize that you have something like that. Now once you put all these things together, you have to put, for example, this pink, the pink part, right? This one, the major pink part, you have to put it below the teeth and below the lips. That is how it will form this part. Of course, this part is not very necessary. It's just to add more realism to what the image is trying to show you. That's just what I wanted to say. Okay, so with this having been said, we are done with the mouth, and we shall now be moving on to other parts. We shall be moving on to the hair, face, and upcoming videos, and just stay tuned for that.